Welcome back to Whiggi's opening lab. Today we're going to do things a little bit different. Rather than me just walk you through the moves of an opening I already know, today together we're going to learn a new opening and we're going to learn from this wheel here. So if you want your opening included on the next wheel for the next video, put it in the comments below. And today we're learning the King's Indian defense. All right. Let's get into it. Unlike some of the openings that were on that wheel, I do know a little bit about the King's Indian defense because I did used to play it. Not well, but we're going to give it a go anyway. So it starts off with d4 and black will play the knight here, stopping them from coming forward. So they go out here and black will start preparing to fianchetto. They will come in and this is the setup that black is going for. Now it's very important after they play e5, e4, not to let them push e5. So what we need to do instead, not castle, but play d6. And this will stop the pawn from pushing forward. And then they'll continue. And then we'll castle. And this is the setup that is the King's Indian defense. There's going to be a few plans in here that I do know of. And the main one, getting the knight out of the way and pushing the pawns forward on the king side to launch an attack. White, on the other hand, might actually expand on the queen side and try to break through over here with some well-timed pushes. Now, I don't know everything about this opening. I definitely don't know how to handle this type of setup. And I don't know what's going on with this move over here. So there are a few ideas that I need to go through. So we're going to get into it right now by playing through a game. Now, I highly recommend while going through this, you actually play over the board with me, and I'm going to be asking questions to try and figure out answers and try to get a better understanding. Remember, we're not looking to memorize the moves, but we are looking to get an understanding, and that's how we're going to get better at the game. So, when I ask questions, feel free to pause the video and try to answer them yourself, and then I'm going to go through it and give you my understanding of the position as we get to it. Now, there's a lot of different variations in the King's Indian defense, and we won't be able to get them all done today. But make sure you like and subscribe to see more in the future. But today we're going to go over the classical King's Indian defense. So it starts off with d4, and black plays knight to c6, preventing white from going e5. They play c4, and black will play g6, preparing to fianchetto their bishop. Now, white will then play knight to c3, which will allow the pawn to come to e5 when they're ready. And black will play bishop to g7. Now in this game, white plays e4. And before we get to our next move, I want you to pause the video and ask yourself a question. Do we need to worry about white playing e4? And if so, what should we do? We do need to respond to this because e4 could move up to e5 and attack our knight. We simply need to play d6. And that will prevent the pawn from moving up. Now, in my example at the beginning, I showed knight to f3 first, but in this game, they play bishop to e2, but that's okay, we still castle. And now they play knight to f3, and we're in the classic King's Indian defense, and typically here we'll play e5. Now, what they could do here is they could capture the pawn, they could push the pawn forward and lock the center, or they could do something else. And in this game, white chose to play castles. Now, we develop our knight, putting pressure on the center. And again, they could do many options. Typically, they'll capture or push forward, and most likely they're going to push forward. And our knight's under attack, we simply need to move it. Now, on the next move, white plays knight to d2. And pause the video, and I want you to ask the question of, is this a good move? What's bad about it? And what is white planning to do? So it kind of looks like an odd move because one, they're moving a minor piece twice before completing their development. Two, they're blocking in their dark squared bishop. But it had some upsides as well. White is planning to attack on the queen side. Now that the center is closed after they played d5, it's going to become a race of attacking on the queen side versus black attacking on the king side. What the knight move does is it supports their c4 pawn. They're going to play b4 soon, They can even bring their knight over to b3 or up to c4 if they need to. Another advantage this move has is it actually makes way for the f pawn to move forward. As black will be moving their pawn forward, white may want to reply by moving their f pawn forward. In this game, black decides to lock the center up a little bit more, and white plays this move a3. Now, if you don't know what this move is doing, pause the video and see if you can figure out what is the point of a3. Now, the point of a3 is simply to push b4. White really wants to break open the queenside. Now, what black could do here is they could play a5. There is actually a lot of good moves that they can do here, but in this game, black plays knight to e8. And the reason I chose this game to show is because this is a great idea in the King's Indian defense, because black then wants to push their f pawn and then start that attack on the king side. Now here, white plays b4, and black could push the f pawn, but we notice that they're going to exchange pawns, and if they exchange and we exchange, suddenly they've got a passed pawn. That's not good. So black defends the pawn, and white brings their rook over, adding another attacker to the b file. Now, what should black do? If you said f5, well done. As soon as we move this knight out of the way, our goal is to push the pawn to f5 and launch that attack. Now here, white plays f3. Had they have played pawn takes pawn, and then we take pawn takes pawn, we open up the g file for our rook to come over and attack the king. But white has played f3, and now do we take this pawn here on e4? We do not. We push our pawn forward, gaining more space on the king side and opening up for our pieces to join the fight. White still going with the plan of attacking on the queen side, and now black plays g5. Black is launching their attack. They're also making way for their knights to come in, and the pawn on g5 eventually plans to go to g4. White plays a5, and black will now bring their rook up, preparing it to go to g6 to launch an attack on the king. White exchanges, and black exchanges with the b pawn not to allow a passed pawn, and white brings their knight over to b3. Now, black moves their rook over to the g file to meet the king, and white starts repositioning their bishop to come and help. White gets off the file, and now we can play g4. Bringing our knight into the attack, and white brings their rook up. Black brings his rook over to the king side, and white attacks the knight, but notice they can't actually take the knight because the pawn is pinned. So black brings their other knight in, and white gets his king off the file, and now that's a real threat, and black will simply move their knight back. You'll notice a lot in the King's Indian defense that these knights here will actually move around the board. How many times have these knights moved in the last few turns? White continues with bishop to e1, and now see if you can find the move. If you said knight to h1, well done. Very hard to find. The knight is going to be dancing around the board for the next couple of moves. And as you play more King's Indian defense games, you'll start to notice patterns like this. So white moves across, and black continues maneuvering their knight. Let's bring the knight up. And now let's bring the rook across. The king once again gets off the file, and now pause the video and see if you can find the winning move. If you found knight takes h3, well done. And then the attack continues with bishop takes, king moves up, and then knight comes up to g5. After the bishop captures back, and with the queen coming to h4 and the bishop attacking the queen, white chose to resign. So what did we learn today? We learned that the King's Indian defense is a race. White is going to go queenside and black is going to attack on the king side. But it's very important that before we attack, we prepare. Before we launch our pawns at the king, we need to improve our pieces. We need to stabilize the center, and we need to get everything into position. Fischer in this game didn't just attack blindly. He maneuvered his pieces, he built pressure, and then he struck. That's the King's Indian.